In 2019, protests broke out in Hong Kong over an extradition bill that would allow alleged criminals to be sent to trial in mainland China. Though the law was eventually shelved, within months the protest evolved into a massive democracy movement in China's last enclave of freedom. This was not the first time that people had taken to the streets, but it could very well be the last. Spread across multiple decades, Hong Kong's political turmoil has left the city divided in two: the blue ribbons, who are supportive of the Beijing government, and the yellow ribbons, who want democracy. Hong Kong's conflict is often told as a very black and white story, but things are not as simple as they seem. Welcome to the Gray Zone. In this limited series, we bring you previously unheard perspectives of Hong Kong's political conflict. With every episode, we'll uncover details of how each piece shapes the city. I'm your host, Teele Rebane, and you're listening to the Curiously Candid Show. It's 8 a.m. on November 24th, 2019, and the polling booths across the city are jam-packed with people voting in the district council elections. Over 70% of eligible adults have come out to elect their councillors, who are essentially like neighborhood representatives. You might be wondering why so many people would be up early on a weekend morning to vote for a neighborhood representative. The 2019 elections were about much more than where to build a local park. They were the one chance that Hong Kongers had to express their support for the Prodemocracy movement in a legitimate way. By the end of the night, the Prodemocracy camp would secure a landslide victory, winning 17 out of 18 districts and unseating a slew of veteran pro-Beijing politicians. Amongst these newly crowned Democratic district councillors were Michael Pang, who was one of the 47 arrested under the new sweeping national security law, and today's guest, his little brother, Jordan Pang. So both you and your brother became district councillors in 2019. How did that happen?
Actually, my aunt, she's quite political aware, and she brought my brother and I to join different rallies when we were small, like when we were 10 or in primary school. We joined the 1st of July rallies every year, and also the June 4th vigil, candlelight vigil in Victoria Park. So I think that's the reason that we are politically aware when we're small. So I'm Jordan Pang. I'm a district councillor in the Central and Western District Council, also a HKU student studying politics and public administration.
How long have you been a district councillor for?
1 year and 3 months.
And how's it going?
Well, so far so good, but I think they're going to DQ the Democrats very soon. But I think it takes time, to let the bill go through the Legislative Council first. So I'm not sure about the details at this moment, but let's see how it goes.
A new bill has been proposed which will only allow quote-unquote patriots to hold public office. What exactly constitutes a patriot is unclear, but it's unlikely that Democrats will qualify under the proposed law. In a recent change, civil servants are now also required to take an oath of allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR and the Basic Law, the city's mini constitution. This law, many fear, will effectively result in the disqualification of most, if not all, Democrats, including Jordan.
When I organize different activities, there not many people joined, and they had no interest in these current affairs stuff. So I was thinking, well, what should I do? Because when you ask people to join the movement at the very beginning, at first maybe they would think, oh wow, I have different stuff to do. I have my studies and my works, my families. But as a district council, it's more like a soft approach to do more bread and butter things, hygiene, rats, bats, different district works. So,
what did your parents and your friends think about you running for district councillor, especially in the context of what had happened?
Well, my parents, actually, they don't, since when I was small, they don't like to intervene in my personal lives and things. So they just, oh, really? Oh, that's good, but be careful, just like saying these words. For my friends, most of my friends, they are yellow, because and also they are pan-democrats, so they support me a lot, and help me to do the campaigns and also distributing flyers. And when I was a member of the current affairs committee in HKUSU, I received some death threat messages, and they even called my father, asked him to stop your son to doing these political stuff. Yeah, so
For doing what?
for doing back in 2019, for the higher education student unions, we held a lot of gatherings, protests, rallies. So China, they're targeting the pro-democrat students. So yeah.
The 2019 elections became almost a referendum for the Democrats. It was the public's one chance to show their support for the pro-democracy movement, or at least their disdain for the establishment. The pro-Beijing party, on the other hand, had hoped for the exact opposite results, to prove that the protesters only represented a minuscule fraction of society. But they didn't. Hong Kongers supported and elected Democrats of all walks of life. Some were more radical, some were more centrist. Many of them were inexperienced and had absolutely no clue how to be a politician. Some of them were just undergraduate students in their early 20s, much like Jordan. But they were united and they had public support, and that's all that mattered. Quickly, a new plan would start to be formulated. We'll get to that in a second.
Originally, I didn't think of being elected. I just wanted to, have a try, because my opponent was a legislative councilor, quite famous, from DAB, the pro-establishment party. And yeah, thanks to the movement in 2019, people voted for me because they didn't like the pro-establishment, so I got elected.
Because of the small area that each councillor has to cover, which sometimes only stretches a couple of blocks, puddles and trash tend to be the big issues. But it's not just the size that limits their scope. There's a bit of history to it.
It's quite strange for people, or especially foreigners, to look at the politics in Hong Kong, especially the district council late, because back in the British Hong Kong, or even after 1997, they intended to, not to let district councillors have that much power in order to, control in every aspect for China. So it's quite strange, I think. But we have limited power, especially the executive power, because when we have different problems, we usually just refer the cases or complaints to the government.
So you're more of a mediator than anything.
Yeah, and yeah.
So with that limited power, what difference do you think you could make?
Well, those things are related to bread and butter, very likely, and also we will write some paper to discuss on district councils, maybe problems related to transport, hygiene again, and yeah, when we talk about the more social policy levels, usually nowadays the government would not allow us to discuss these topics, because they're saying, oh, these topics are violate the district council ordinance, but I can't see the reason. But they just trying to DQ all the topics that the Democrats raised in the council. So yeah.
Right after casting her vote, the city's chief executive, Carrie Lam, pledged her support to the district councillor. Many hoped that this would come true, but the results say otherwise.
I hereby pledge that the Hong Kong SAR government will continue to fully support the work of the district councils, provide more resources, and listen more attentively to the views and opinions expressed by the district council members on behalf of the local population.
In the past, the government didn't really intervene in district councillors' work, but recently we've heard more and more cases where the government got directly involved in district affairs. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course, they DQ'd our discussion papers when, for example, we're saying that, one example recently, we tried to talk about the SIM card registration policies, to use your real names to when you buy a SIM card, you have to use your use your real name to buy it. This is a new policy proposed by the government, but of course, obviously, we think this policy is quite problematic, because a chance for the government to to get data and personal data, and to invade our privacy. So we wrote a paper and tried to discuss on district council, and again, the district officer from the Home Affairs Department, the HASAR, he said, well, this paper violated the district council ordinance, because it's not the topic that's related to the districts, but related to the whole Hong Kong policy.
Do you think that there's a real distinction between local affairs and general Hong Kong affairs?
So I find it quite strange, because you can't just have a clear cut between district affairs and also Hong Kong policy, because otherwise it's Central and Western District would be an independent country. Yeah, so it's quite for the logic, the Hong Kong government hates Hong Kong independence or any independences. They hate independence, but they're showing that they have an attitude that they would love to have a independent Central and Western District. Yeah.
Actually, where does your funding even come from?
Funding is provided by the government. Actually, we can have some reimbursement claim forms. When you fill in the claim forms, you submit it to the Home Affairs Department. They will reimburse the money to you. It also includes the publications. So when I made a poster, not poster, but a banner saying "Glory to Hong Kong," that's a slogan back in the 2019 movement. When I placed the banner, I printed the banner, I placed it in Kennedy Town. When I asked for the reimbursement from the HAD, they refused. Yeah.
You talked a lot about hygiene and bread and butter stuff, but it was really clear since the beginning that these elections were never about that. They were about expressing public opinion to the government by the only democratic means possible, and what they were trying to express was that the people want greater freedoms. So what happened to that?
I already knew that district councillors, they have limited power and they don't have much execution power, but it's a good way to improve the images of pro-democrats among the citizens by doing a good job in the bread and butter. So I'm representing the pro-democrats, the sector. So when I'm doing a good job in bread and butter, I think for the apolitical citizens or even the blue ribbons, the supporters of the government, may have a different views towards us. So
the public's perception of district councillors changed drastically after 2019, with many criticizing them for using the public office to advance the agenda of the Pan-Democrats instead of doing district councillor work. T.Y. Long spoke yesterday, and he had a pretty sharp criticism about the Pandems, and he personally thought that the Pandems were not doing what they were elected to do, so they were not focusing on district issues. What do you think about that?
Well, for the past year, I'm not talking about myself. Let's talk about other district councillors in Central and Western District. Well, for the past year, I think what they have done is more than the amount of the pro-establishment they did in the past 4 years. So I think that's really funny for Sai Wan to say that, because he's just trying to make political accusations towards us. But yeah, he criticizes many things and all the time. So I just treat it as a as a funny comment, and it's just a clown, I would say.
What is your personal goal now?
I don't have a really clear or a really obvious goal that when I achieve this, okay, Hong Kong, the civil society is going to be different and make a big difference. But it's more about a continuous job to connect more residents as more as I can, and also to raise awareness among them. I think it's more like a continuous job rather than a really clear cut, a big goal.
In early July 2020, the Prodemocracy camp held primaries to figure out which candidates to put on the ballot at the Legislative Council elections to give the Democrats the highest chance of securing a majority. Despite the government warning the organizers that they may be breaching the national security law, the primaries had the highest turnout since the handover. That's Carrie Lam, the city's chief executive on the primaries.
I would just to put down a further note of warning. If this so-called primary election's purpose is to achieve the ultimate goal of delivering what they call a 35 plus, with the objective of objecting to, resisting every policy initiative of the Hong Kong SAR government, then it may fall into the category of subverting the state power, which is now one of the 4 types.
This warning ultimately materialized when 47 Democrats taking part in the primaries were arrested earlier this year under the national security law. One of them was Jordan's brother, Michael Pang, councillor of the Southern District. I'd like to talk about your brother a bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Could you tell us who he is?
Oh, he's Michael Pang, one of the 47 Democrats that arrested before. So,
For what?
For just joining the primary election among the Democrats in June, in May, June, like the mid 2020, and so yeah, and he got arrested. Yeah. Oh, at the same time, he's the Southern District Councilor. So yeah.
What did he get charged with? I love that you have to take a moment to think.
Yeah, I don't. Well, because there are 4 different types of crimes under the national security law. I don't even know how to distinguish the differences between those 4, because those words, the wordings are just so subjective and quite similar, and quite you never know the meaning behind the words. So just joining the primary election. I can't think of the word.
I think it's subversion.
Subversion to the national security or something like that. Yeah.
I think it's usually to undermine the state.
Undermine the state. Yeah.
I'm glad we got that cleared out.
Yeah.
Did you follow his trial actively? Because I think most of Hong Kong did.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for the 4 days trial in West Kowloon, yeah, I went there every day. So yeah, and also for the High Court bail, he went to the High Court 2 weeks before, and to get a High Court bail, and yeah, I went there and supported him.
He's out on bail now, right?
Yeah, he is.
He was one of the lucky ones in that sense.
Yeah.
Your brother being charged under the national security law. Mm-hmm. How does that affect the way in which you do your work as a district councillor?
Well, I have to be really careful with my words and my campaigns and my district works, different things, because maybe the next target will be Jordan Pang in the Central Western District, so we don't know. So we have to be really careful, but it just affects me a lot because I spent my time to go to the court and to deal with the bail process. So I didn't put much time as before in my districts, but after my brother got the High Court bail, things get normal.
Does it make you scared?
I'm not scared, but I think it's not quite convenient to do my stuff. Yeah, I think when we face the media or when we face when we publish some posts on Facebook, we have to self-censor,
Are you afraid of putting your brother at more risk?
Of course. Yeah, I don't want to add more pressure on him, yeah.
What do you think the charging the 47 pandems or activists, what does that mean in Hong Kong?
I think it's a really a big decision made by the Chinese government actually, but not just the police department or the HKSAR, because they were having the People's Congress in China back in the end of February. So they had to arrest these Democrats to show that they had a control in Hong Kong before having the meeting. So they're just the bargaining chips of the CCP to bargain with other countries, just like the Western countries in other worlds.
Do you think this will keep happening more and more in the coming years? Or do you think at some point they'll just run out of people to arrest?
Yeah, and also people seem, try to slow down their pace and also try not to be that high profile. So I think, surely the police department, they are going to arrest people who are really vocal when something happens. But at this moment, I think people are just trying to be really more careful. Yeah.
Have you discussed with your brother what to do if he goes to jail? Have you set up any kind of plans, any kind of ideas?
Actually, not much to do, just maybe visit him regularly and to take care of his fiancée, because he is going to marry in May with his fiancée. Yeah, but maybe his children, I don't know if he's going to have any, but yeah, something like that. Quite, not the things related to politics, but the family issues.
What are the plans?
Yeah.
With his brother and many other colleagues in jail on trumped-up charges for doing their jobs, Jordan faces a dilemma. To continue his work as a civil servant, he must take the oath of allegiance. But will he plead allegiance to a government that persecutes local officials like himself? Here is a report from Vice in an interview with Ronnie Tong, a key advisor to the Hong Kong government.
Some officials are loyal to Beijing. Ronnie Tong, a top advisor to Hong Kong's chief executive, says that after the chaos of the 2019 protests, the city needs to prioritise stability.
This is in reaction to what happened last year when all of the Democrats got together and sworn they would veto down every single resolution and force the collapse of the SAR government.
Do you think there is some truth to scepticism that this oath-taking will push district councillors into a corner where they may have to resign or end up like the 47 Democrats who have been tried, who are being tried for subversion?
No, I don't think so. A lot of people are saying that they would take the oath and they would, go on to fight for democracy. Look at the situation realistically. Without having the consent of Beijing, can Hong Kong really achieve any degree of democracy?
Now, let's talk more about this oath. So will you be taking the oath of allegiance?
That's a good question. I think I will, just like other district councillors, especially the pro-Democrats, because we think we cannot give up our seat, and it's one of the ways to continue our jobs and goals. So we should not give up the seat that easily. And also, I think the only people that can unseat us, they are the voters, but not the government. So yeah.
How does that make you feel personally?
I don't think it matters. It's just, maybe people were saying that, you're betraying your own beliefs and those stuff, but yeah, we know the reason behind when we take an oath. Yeah.
Do you think you'll be able to continue your work?
Nope. This is my last 2 years, I think. Yeah. So after that, I'm not qualified because maybe I'm not patriotic enough, after the consideration from the election committee. But no one knows, but let's see how it goes. And so I didn't think much of the future. I just focus on my everyday works. Just try my best every day, and things will get better, I hope. Yeah.
Next time, we'll talk to a local journalist about covering the Hong Kong protests and what has happened to press freedom in the city since. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Curiously Candid and Instagram at The Curiously Candid Show. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever platforms you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Teele Rebane, and we'll see you next time.